Okay, we are now streaming live on YouTube, so that way the public can have access to these court proceedings. Good morning, everyone. My name is Judge Farrey, and I will be presiding over your first appearance hearing today. And I have a few announcements that will apply to all of you and some of you, so make sure you listen up very carefully on these announcements. As I mentioned, today is what is called your first appearance hearing. We are not here to try your case or take a plea. We are here for the court to inform you of the charges that have been filed against you in Clayton County. I will advise you of certain rights that you have. I will also tell you about your bond if you are given a bond here today. I will also tell you about your next court date, which is called a preliminary hearing. And I will also determine whether or not you qualify for a court-appointed attorney to represent you in your case. Now, as far as your rights, you have the right to remain silent and say nothing. But should you give up this right, keep in mind that anything you say during this proceeding may be used against you if this case goes to trial. As I mentioned, we are streaming live on YouTube, so these proceedings are being recorded. So I strongly caution you about saying certain things about your case that may hurt you. Now, during this proceeding and during all other proceedings, you have the following rights as well. You do have the right to the presumption of innocence until the state proves your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to indictment by the grand jury for most felonies or by accusation for misdemeanors. You have the right to a speedy and public trial by jury. You also have the right to see, hear, and cross-examine witnesses who are called to testify against you. You have the right to compel the attendance of witnesses in your own behalf by subpoena. You have the right to testify and offer other evidence in your own defense if you choose to do so. However, if you choose not to testify or offer any evidence at trial, there will be no presumption of guilt raised against you. You also have the right to have an attorney represent you as well. So about your bond, there are 3 different options that you'll be allowed to consider when it comes to your bond if you are given a bond here today. Some of you will be allowed to post unrestricted bonds for your release pending prosecution of your case. Now, there are 3 different ways that this can be done. The first way is called a cash bond. If you decide to post using a cash bond, you'll pay the full amount of your bond in cash to the sheriff's office plus any mandated fees that they have to add to that amount. The sheriff will hold it, and after the final disposition of your case, the cash will be returned to the person who posted it. So if I tell you that your bond, in order to get out today, that you have to pay $1,000 and you have $1,000 cash that you want to use, you'll pay that $1,000 cash plus any fees to the sheriff. And then once you successfully go through your court process and your case ends, then that cash will be returned to the person who posted it. That's the first option. The second option, we'll still use my example of $1,000 bond. Let's say I tell you your bond is $1,000 and you don't have $1,000 cash, then you can go through what is called a commercial bonding company who will post the bond for you. These are private companies who charge different fees for posting a bond for you. For example, the bonding company may tell you, if you want us to post this $1,000 bond for you, we're going to charge you 10% of that amount. 10% of that is $100, and you will have to pay the commercial bonding company $100, and they'll post the $1,000 bond for you, and then you can be released. If they tell you it's 15%, that means 15% of the $1,000, which is $150. So their fees vary from bonding company to bonding company. I do not know how much each bonding company charges. You will have to call the bonding companies and find out who has the best rates for you. But they may charge generally up to 15% of that bond amount. That's the fee that they charge for their services. You do not get it back. So once you pay that fee, don't expect the bonding company to give it back to you. The third option is you can use what is called a property bond. So again, using my example of $1,000, if you do not go through a commercial bonding company, if you do not have the cash to pay a cash bond, but you know someone who owns property that has equity in it, the property has to have at least 3 times the bond amount in order for you to use it. So if your bond is $3,000, then the net equity in that person's property needs to be at least 3 times that amount, which is $3,000. And then you can use the property bond to post your bond. Now, some of you will have what is called special conditions on your bond. The special condition may prohibit you from contacting certain people or going to or around certain places. And this special condition will be provided to you on your bond order. But if I tell you, for example, that you are to have no contact and to stay away from someone, what that means is you must stay away absolutely, directly, indirectly, whether it's by mail, email, pager, telephone, through another party, whether it's social media, whether it's that person's home, workplace, or their immediate family member. That means stay away and have no contact with that individual. If I mention to you that you cannot return to a certain place or go upon a certain premises, that means you can no longer go to that particular location. Now, if you violate this court's order during the time that you're out on bond, your bond will be revoked. You would not be entitled to another bond while you wait for trial. And you may have additional charges brought against you, such as aggravated stalking or influencing a witness. You also could be sentenced up to 10 years in prison, and you can be fined up to $20,000. So we take these bond conditions seriously. So make sure if you do get a bond today that you adhere to it. Now, for family members who will be assisting you in posting your bond today, they will be provided the information about your bond amount after we have concluded this first appearance hearing today. I will complete the paperwork. I'll send it over to the jail. They'll process it and they'll provide that information to your family member. Now, if your family member is a victim on the warrant and there's a special condition that's in place saying you can't have any contact with that family member cannot post that bond for you. You'll have to find someone else. Now, some of you may be charged with offenses for which this court is not authorized by law to set a bond for you. In this event, I will give you a bond hearing date, and it'll be scheduled before a superior court judge, and you'll be informed of that date when you come before me, but then your bond will be addressed at that time. If you are currently on active probation, this court may not be authorized to set a bond for you either. We will give your probation officer an opportunity to decide if he or she will file a warrant to revoke your probation. And this is typically done during your preliminary hearing. So listen up about your preliminary hearing that I mentioned earlier. Your preliminary hearing is a probable cause hearing. The purpose of the preliminary hearing is to determine whether there is enough evidence or probable cause to justify keeping you detained on your charges until such time that your case goes to trial. For those of you that are charged with misdemeanors only, you may have the option of waiving your preliminary hearing. If you waive your preliminary hearing, it will not affect your ability to be able to post bond here today, and it does not affect your right to have an attorney represent you, nor does it say that you're guilty or not guilty, nor does it affect your right to a jury trial. You're just skipping that step in the judicial process and moving your case along. So for those of you that are charged with misdemeanors, if you choose to have a preliminary hearing, your preliminary hearing date is going to be September 21st. But I'll repeat those dates when you come back before me. If you're charged with a felony or felony and misdemeanors, your preliminary hearing date will be September 22nd. If you are not given a bond here today, your bond hearing date, so that you can address bond later, is going to be September 24th. Again, I'll repeat those dates when each of you come up before me. Now, last and certainly not least, we are conducting this by video conference. However, this is a formal court proceeding. And so I expect each and every one of you to conduct yourselves in a respectful manner as if we are physically in the courtroom. So if I find that you are being disruptive, if I find that I cannot complete your your first appearance hearing today, then I am going to reschedule you. I will not give you a bond today, and I'll reschedule you for you to come back another day and we'll try it again. So please conduct yourself with the utmost respect. because this is a court proceeding. Now, I will call each of you up one by one. I will give you the information needed for you to understand what is going on in your case. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. Okay, so hang on to your questions until the end when I ask you whether you have any questions, and we'll address it at that time. So I need everyone to go ahead and raise your right hands so I can swear you all in. Do you swear and affirm that the statements that you give before this court, including the statements made on your application for a court-appointed counsel, is true and correct? If so, say I do and lower your hands. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and start with the first female inmate. That's Portia Gay. And when you all come forward, make sure you speak loud and clear so I can hear you. I know that everyone has masks on, and so sometimes that affects my ability to understand you. So make sure you just speak up loud and clear.
And right in front of the camera, please. Judge. Stand right in front of you so you can see the judge. Okay. There you go.
Okay. Are you Portia Gay? I can't hear you. Are you Portia Gay? Okay, just speak up a little louder. Ms. Gay, you have been charged with obstruction of an officer. Your bond amount is $1,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charge and your bond amount? Okay, so it states on the warrantless arrest affidavit that on August 7, 2021, after being advised of a court order signed by Judge Stephen Teskey to remove the minor child, Cameron Ellis, Ms. Gay refused to open the door for over 20 minutes, screaming through the door. Once Ms. Gay opened the door, she then tried to slam the door closed on myself, and Lieutenant Green had to use soft hands to assist Ms. Gay in cuffs after resistance. So those are the allegations that led to this charge of obstruction of an officer. Do you believe you'll be able to make your $1,500 bond? Yes or no?
I was never given a warrant, so I don't know what I would be making a bond for, and I didn't resist arrest. They threw me on the floor when I came in the door and snatched me and my son when we walked out. There weren't officers. I don't think sheriff officers work at the correction facility, because everybody that came and picked me up worked here, not at the Jonesboro Police Department.
Do you believe you'll be able to make bond? Okay, so I'm going to indicate on here that you don't believe you'll be able to make bond. Are you employed?
No, ma'am, I'm not.
Okay, so I'm going to appoint an attorney to represent you. Ms. Gay, you need to talk to your attorney and share with your attorney the factual circumstances, and your attorney will be able to assist you with making a defense. Your next court date is going to be September 21st, 2021. If you do bond out, that court date will be waived. If you don't bond out, you will be brought before the court to see if there's enough probable cause to keep you detained on that charge. Have a good day. Did you have any other questions?
Again, I don't have a warrant number, so you're not telling me what the warrant stated or what it was your reason for giving the warrant. They never gave me a warrant.
So you're gonna receive the paperwork. I'm gonna send it over to the jail so that way you have a copy of it, and it's gonna have the warrantless arrest affidavit number on there. Okay, have a good day. The next person I have is Lillian Gonzalez. Are you Lillian Gonzalez? Yes or no? Okay, speak up for me, Ms. Gonzalez. You've been charged with one count of theft by shoplifting. Your bond is set at $2,500. Do you understand your charge and your bond amount?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there is a special condition. During the time that you are out on bond and this case is open, you are not to return to or go upon the premises located at 2034 Mount Zion Road in Morrow, Georgia. That's the Home Depot store. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you believe you'll be able to make bond, Ms. Gonzalez?
No, I mean, I'm trying, but I don't know if I can.
Okay. I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. You do qualify, so I am appointing an attorney to represent you in these proceedings. Your next court date is going to be your preliminary hearing date, and that is because you're charged with a felony based on the amount that's alleged in the warrant. Excuse me. Your next court date is going to be September 22nd, 2021. If you bond out, that court date will be waived and you'll receive a new one in the mail. If you're still incarcerated, you will be brought before the court on September 22nd to determine if there's enough probable cause. Do you have any questions, Ms. Gonzalez, about what I've mentioned? Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. Next person I have is Yanisha Robinson Shorter.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. You've been charged with one count of simple battery. Your bond is set at $3,000. Do you understand the charge and the bond amount? You do have a special condition, and that is to stay away and have no contact with Terry Lee during the time that your case is open and this bond is in place. Do you understand that special condition?
Yes.
Do you believe you'll be able to make bond?
Yes.
Okay, I did review your application for a court-appointed counsel, and you do qualify to have an attorney appointed to represent you, so I have granted that request. Your next court date is going to be your preliminary hearing date, and that is for September 21st, 2021. If you bond out, that court date will be waived, and you'll receive a new court notice in the mail. Do you have any questions, Ms. Robinson Shorter? Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. The next person is Khadijah Sidabi. Good morning. Are you Ms. Sidabi?
Sidabe, yes.
Sidabe. Ms. Sidabe, you've been charged with driving with no license, no insurance, and following too close. Your total bond between those charges is $2,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond amount? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think you'll be able to make bond?
I can try. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay. I did review your application for a court-appointed counsel, and you do qualify for an attorney to be appointed by the court to represent you. So I have granted your request because you are unemployed, correct? Okay. And so your next court date is going to be September 21st, 2021. If you do bond out, that court date will be waived. You'll receive a new one in the mail. If you're still incarcerated on that date, you will be brought before the court to determine whether or not there's enough probable cause to keep you detained. Do you have any questions, Ms. Sidabe?
Should I ask? I don't know if I should ask this.
It needs to be related to the charges, your bond amount, or the court-appointed attorney.
Say it one more time.
Do you have any questions about your charges, your bond amount, or the court-appointed attorney?
No.
Okay. Have a good day. Next person I have is Alicia Whitsett. Are you Miss Alicia Whitsett?
Ma'am, I am.
Okay, good morning. You have been charged with possession of marijuana less than an ounce, possession of a controlled substance in violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act, and distracted driving, that is driving with a telephone in your hand. Between those three charges, your total bond amount is $6,550. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe you'll be able to make bond?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney, and you qualify for the court to appoint an attorney to represent you. So I have granted that request. Your next court date is going to be set for, because one of the charges is a felony, that's the possession of the controlled substance. So your court date is going to be the preliminary hearing date, which is September 22nd, 2021. But if you bond out, you won't have that court date and you'll receive a new court date in the mail. Okay, do you have any questions, Ms. Whitsett?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. All right, I think that concludes the females. The next I have on my list is Juan Barrios on the male side. Good morning. Are you Juan Barrios? Okay, you have been charged with driving with no license. Your bond is set at $1,000. Do you understand the charge and the bond amount?
Yes.
Okay, do you believe you'll be able to make bond?
I already have a bond, but I paid it.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Barrios, I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney, and you do qualify, so we are appointing an attorney to represent you in this case. I do have a preliminary hearing date here for September 21st, but since you posted bond, once you bond out, that court date will be canceled, and you'll have a new court date that comes in the mail to you. Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am, it's okay.
Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. Next, I have Nasir Dawson. Good morning, Mr. Dawson. You've been charged with one count of obstructing an officer. Your bond is $1,500. Do you understand the charge and the bond amount?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Do you believe you'll be able to make bond?
Yes, ma'am, I will be able to make bond.
Okay. I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. You qualify, so I am appointing an attorney through the courts to represent you in this case. Your preliminary hearing date is scheduled for September 21st, but remember, once you bond out, that court date is going to be canceled, and you'll receive a new court date in the mail. Do you have any questions for me, sir?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day. Next person I have is Jonathan English.
Hello, how you doing?
Good morning, sir. You're Mr. English, correct? Okay, so you have been charged with speeding, doing 65 and a 45, as well as possession of marijuana less than an ounce. Your total bond is $2,000. Do you understand the charges and your bond amount?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe you'll be able to make bond?
Not at the moment.
Okay. I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. You qualify, so I am going to appoint an attorney to represent you, Mr. English. And your court date, the next court date is going to be your preliminary hearing date, and that is scheduled for September 21st, 2021. If you do bond out, that court date is going to be canceled and you'll receive a new one in the mail. You have any questions, Mr. English?
No, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Next, I have Michael Hunter.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, sir. Mr. Hunter, you have been charged with following too close, as well as DUI alcohol less safe. Your total bond between both charges is $5,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your bond and your charges?
No.
Okay, so you do have a special condition while you are out on bond and this case is pending. You are to not consume any alcohol or illegal drugs. Do you believe you'll be able to make bond?
I'm not sure at the moment, Your Honor.
Okay. I did review your application for a court-appointed counsel, and you do qualify to have the courts appoint an attorney to represent you in this case, so I am granting your request. Your next court date is going to be your preliminary hearing date. That date is September 21st, 2021. If you do bond out, sir, you'll receive a new court notice in the mail, and that date will not happen. But if you're still here by September 21st, you will be brought before the court, and there will be a hearing to determine if there's enough probable cause to keep you detained on your charges. Do you have any questions, Mr. Hunter? Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. Next person I have is Willie Mentor. Are you Willie Mentor? Okay, you've been charged with one count of theft by taking. I've set that bond at $5,000. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charge and your bond amount? Do you believe you'll be able to make bond? I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay.
No.
All right. There is a special condition to your bond, sir, and you are not to return to 2050 Southampton Road, in Atlanta, Georgia, 30349. That's in Clayton County. I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. You do qualify to have an attorney appointed by the courts to represent you, so I have granted your request. Your preliminary hearing date is being scheduled for September 21st, 2021. If you're bonded out by then, that court date will not happen. If you're still incarcerated, you will be brought before the court to determine if there's enough probable cause to keep you detained on the charge of theft by taking. You have any questions for me, Mr. Mentor? Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. Next person I have is Harold Mitchell. Are you Harold Mitchell Jr.?
You go.
Yeah, I can't hear you. You're Harold Mitchell Jr.? Okay. So you've been charged with one count of giving a false name, address, or date of birth, as well as obstruction of an officer. Your total bond between both charges is $2,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your bond and your charge?
Yes.
You think you'll be able to make bond, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay. I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. You do qualify to have an attorney appointed by the courts to represent you. So I am granting that request. Your next court date right now is your preliminary hearing date. I'm scheduling it for September 21st, 2021. But if you bond out, remember that date will be canceled and you'll receive a new court date in the mail. You have any questions, Mr. Mitchell? Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. The next person I have is Shakim Moore. Shakim Moore. Are you Shakim Moore? Okay, so sir, I do, you've been charged with 2 counts. That's a red light violation and also possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Your bond on the red light violation is $500. I have denied bond on the possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. I'm showing that you have an active probation out of Cobb County. It's for 8 years and it started back in 2018. So I'm going to deny bond at this time. I am scheduling a bond hearing date for you. That's going to be held on September 24th. So at that time, you'll be brought before the court to revisit the issue of bond. Your preliminary hearing date will also be scheduled for you, and that's going to be September 22nd, 2021. You'll be again brought before the court on that day to determine whether or not there's enough evidence or probable cause to keep you detained on these 2 charges. You do qualify to have an attorney represent you, so I am appointing an attorney who will represent you in those proceedings. You have any questions, Mr. Moore? Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. Next person I have is George Murray. Good morning. Are you George Murray? Okay, so Mr. Murray, you have been charged with 1 count of battery, family violence. It was charged as a misdemeanor. I have upgraded it to a felony, however, because I'm showing that in 2014 in Clayton County, you have a guilty charge to the same offense, as well as in 2006 in Clayton County, you had a nolo contendere plea to the same offense. So it is being upgraded to a felony. Your bond is set at $7,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charge and your bond amount? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Was that yes or no? Okay. You do have special conditions, sir, on this bond. If you do make bond, you are to stay away and have no contact with Martha Ann Murray. You also cannot return to 5613 Pine Ridge Place in Forest Park, Georgia, 30297. Is that a shared residence?
It's where I live.
I can't hear.
It's where I live.
Speak up.
That's where I live.
Okay, if it's a shared residence with Martha Ann Murray, you won't be able to go back except to collect some of your personal belongings once you bond out. You can contact the sheriff of Clayton County to accompany you within 10 days of being released from jail, and you can go back and get some of your personal belongings. So until such time that we modify this bond, or another judge modifies this bond, you will not be able to go back to live there. Do you understand those conditions, Mr. Murray? Do you believe you'll be able to make bond, sir?
Well, I'm really not sure, Your Honor, but what I am doing is I know I got another court date coming up tomorrow. So I don't know. I mean, is that here in Clayton County? They're gonna stop me from making money with I'm on a property bond. I have a court date tomorrow at 9 here.
Okay. Is it a first appearance? What type of court date is it? Do you know?
It's court date. Well, I've already done the first appearance.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure what you have tomorrow, but this particular, I mean, if you're incarcerated, you have court tomorrow, they're just going to bring you up, meaning that, you know, they'll bring you for your court date. So that way you won't miss it. But your court date in this particular case is going to be scheduled for September 21st, 2021. This is the preliminary hearing date. But if you do make bond on this charge, then that court date will be waived and you'll receive a new one in the mail. So make sure you update your address of where you can get notices about court in the mail if you end up bonding out. I did see your application for a court-appointed counsel. You do qualify to have an attorney representing you. Do you already have a public defender representing you?
I don't know his name.
Okay. Well, talk to that attorney. They may put you with the same attorney. I'm not sure how they assign the cases, but let that attorney know about this charge too. Okay. So when you talk to your attorney tomorrow, tell them about your battery charge and that your bond is $7,500. And tell them that you have a court date of September 21st. So maybe they can work it all out together. You have any questions for me, sir?
I wanted to know if they bring me to court. That's all I wanted to know.
Oh, yes, they'll bring you to court. All right. Okay, have a good day, sir. Next person I have is Jeremiah Poole. Good morning. Are you Jeremiah Poole? Okay. Can you either stand back or I just need the camera lowered? I can only see your eyes. Okay. All right, Mr. Poole. Good morning. You've been charged with several offenses: failure to stop at a stop sign, suspended registration, possession of marijuana more than an ounce. So that's a felony. Possession of cocaine in violation of the Georgia Controlled Substances Act. That's a felony offense. No insurance and possession of drug-related objects. Those are misdemeanors. The total bond between all of those offenses is $12,500. Do you understand the charges and the bond amount?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe you'll be able to make bond?
No.
You said yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
I got but hopefully.
Okay. I did review your application, Mr. Poole, for a court-appointed attorney, and you do qualify to have an attorney represent you, so I am granting that request. Your preliminary hearing date is going to be scheduled for September 22nd, 2021. So if you're still incarcerated on that day, you'll be brought before the court to determine if there is enough probable cause to keep you detained. If you have bonded out, that court date will be waived and you'll receive a new notice in the mail. You have any questions, sir?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. Next person I have is Christopher Sutton. Good morning. Are you Christopher Sutton? Okay, speak up just a little bit for me. So I have before me one charge of theft by taking. It's being charged as a misdemeanor and your bond is $2,000. Do you understand the charge and the bond amount?
You're right.
No, you're right. You're right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And there is a bond, there is a special condition to this bond. You are to stay away and have no contact with Sabrina Lynch while this case is open and while you're out on bond. Do you understand that condition? Do you believe you'll be able to make bond? I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. You do qualify to have this court appoint an attorney to represent you. So I have granted that request. Your next court date is going to be the preliminary hearing date, which is set for September 21st, 2021. But if you do bond out, that court date will be waived and you'll receive a new notice in the mail. You have any questions for me, Mr. Sutton? You
said no contact with her, right?
Yes. Stay away and have no contact with Sabrina Lynch. I think she was the alleged victim in this case. So don't have any contact with her directly, indirectly, social media or anything while this case is pending. You have any other questions? All right, you may be excused. Have a good day. The next person I have is Anton Williams. Are you Anton Williams? Okay, so Mr. Williams, you've been charged with 1 count of criminal trespass. Your bond is set at $2,000. Do you understand the charge and the bond amount? Do you believe you'll be able to make bond? Okay, there are some special conditions. You're to stay away and have no contact with Maisha Hill. And you cannot return to 3386 A628 Mount Zion Road in Clayton County, Georgia. If that is a shared residence, I will indicate that you can go back within 10 days of being released to collect some of your personal belongings and items, but you have to be accompanied by the Clayton County Sheriff. And you can collect your belongings that's not in dispute. So if y'all are fighting over something like, a bag, you have to leave it, just any undisputed items. Do you understand the special conditions that I've mentioned? I did review your application for a court-appointed attorney. You do qualify for this court to appoint an attorney to represent you, so I've granted that request, and that attorney will be in contact with you. Make sure you update the courts with your address, because since you cannot go back to that residence and you can't have contact with Ms. Hill, I want to make sure that there's a means for the court to contact you and your court-appointed attorney to contact you. Well, it looks like you put an alternate address on here anyway. Is it the Rex, Georgia address?
That's where I went.
Okay. And so your next court date, sir, is going to be scheduled for September 21st, 2021. If you do bond out, like you believe you'll be able to, you'll receive a new court notice in the mail. Do you have any questions for me?
Also, does that include my child?
The stay away and no contact?
Yes.
So if your child is with her at the time, that does include your child. If your child is somewhere else, and not with her, I'm not prohibiting you to have any I'm not prohibiting, you from having contact with your child. How old is your child?
He's 2.
You said 2? Okay. Hang on, because I'll indicate on here. Does the child live with Miss Hill?
He lives with both of us. Like, we live in the same house together. But recently, as of yesterday, she went back to Alabama. She took all her stuff and moved back to Alabama.
Oh, okay, with the minor child.
So that's why I'm within the situation. I'm trying to get legitimized. So that's why I'm trying to,
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, you're going to have to go through that court process to be able to have contact with your child. Like I said, if your child is not with her, then of course you can have contact with your child, but I want you to be careful about that. I don't want you going through aunties, uncles saying she need to turn over my child. Be careful about that. Okay. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to say that, but the goal here is not to keep you away from your child. I do want you to know that. So continue with that legitimation process once you bond out, so that way you can have some independent contact with your child. The other thing too is since I've appointed an attorney to represent you, talk to your lawyer about maybe modifying the conditions or reaching some sort of agreement and getting this case resolved to where it doesn't affect you being able to have contact with your child. Okay. You have any other questions, sir?
No, that's all.
Okay, you may be excused. Have a good day. All right, looks like the last person I have is Robert Duntrelli Williams III. Is that you, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you've been charged with 1 count of improper backing and 1 count of DUI alcohol less safe. They're both misdemeanors. Your total bond amount between both charges is $5,500. Do you understand what I've mentioned as far as your charges and your bond amount?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe you'll be able to make bond? Okay, you said yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And there is a special condition. While you are out on bond and this case is open and pending, you are to have no consumption of alcohol or illegal drugs. Do you understand that, Mr. Williams? Okay, I did review your application for a court-appointed counsel. You make well beyond the threshold that's required to appoint a court-appointed attorney for you. So I am not granting your request to have a court-appointed attorney, but you can certainly hire your own attorney to represent you. Do you plan to hire your own attorney or are you going to represent yourself?
I plan on hiring.
Okay, so I'm just going to indicate on here that you plan to hire your own attorney. Your next court date is the preliminary hearing date, which is scheduled for September 21st, 2021. However, if you do bond out like you believe you'll be able to do, that court date will be waived and you'll receive a new notice in the mail. Do you have any questions for me, Mr. Williams?
Yes. Will I still be able to drive a vehicle? I'm a service technician.
So there are that question I don't know, but I do know that there are some things you need to handle as soon as possible in order to save your license. And so you need to talk to if you plan on hiring an attorney, you need to get on the phone with an attorney ASAP, probably by tomorrow if you bond out, because they're gonna have to do some things and file some documents to save your license. But I can't tell you what that is because I can't give you legal advice. I just know that when you're charged with DUI, you have to act fairly quickly.
Okay.
All right. So talk to your lawyer and they'll be able to advise you. Do you have any other questions? All right. Have a good day. You may be excused. Okay, deputies, I think that's it for today.